Hello, I'm Lynn May. Welcome to Snapshot and to the American Air Power Museum at Republic Airport in Farmingdale. I'm here in what was the Communications Center out in the field during World War II. And whether the message was from your commanding officer or your family back home, transmission was just as crucial then as it is now. Join us next for Love Letters, Part 3 of a 5-part special edition of Snapshot.
Everybody wanted to be in the service.
It's like doing a day's job.
We loved our buddies like we loved our families.
It's a terrible thing to have somebody in the war.
I never experienced anything like it before in my life.
Here we are off to the wars. Being serious with a woman was a million miles away. And she was studying to be an opera singer, so I said, Pearl, goodbye, and I'll see you someday when you're famous. 6 months later, I get a letter from her. I'm sorry, let's kiss and make up. And that's all I had to hear. And every soldier wants to have a girl to write home to. And the love letters flew back and forth like you wouldn't believe.
The letters that we sent out were really dull because we didn't have anything to talk about. You couldn't talk about the war, and there wasn't much else going on. And some of officers had the job of censoring letters periodically, and they were really sad. Some of these guys writing to their wives or girlfriends, they'd been away for 2.5 years, and you could feel that there was a sense of concern. They didn't know each other well anymore, and it was really sad.
It was sometime in the summer, probably July, August. I get this lovely letter from this girl I was going with. We were engaged, by the way. Everybody got engaged when you went to the service, you know. And she says, Dear Al. Uh-oh. It wasn't Dear Honey or Sweetheart. It was Dear Al. And I read through it. And she said it was her mother's advice not to be engaged anymore because you never know what's going to happen in the war and all this stuff. Over the side I went.
Writing to the men and women serving abroad provides a link between life on the front lines and events back home. It helps combat feelings of loneliness, provides reassurance, and boosts morale on both sides. Though the V-mail of yesterday is the email of today, the message is still the same, and it's from the heart. Wait for me. I'll be home soon.
I remember the V-mail. They're very small letters. I guess you could write a letter on a regular piece of paper. That was a special form for V-mail, and then they condensed it, they made it smaller, and that's how they shipped it to the guys overseas, and vice versa.
As the stream of V-mail pouches pours in, the letters are sliced open by a cutting machine, and they are now ready for quick processing. Correct letters, once they are sorted into destination groups, are given numbers. Then, in trim bundles of 1,600, the V-mail is ready for the next step. In a few short minutes, all these letters will be on a reel of film. Here are the machines that do it. They are called air draft machines, and they photograph each letter on the one tiny frame of a reel of 16mm film. The developers can handle 3 reels an hour, and when the film is dried, it's ready to go. On this table are 260 reels of film, in which are recorded all of the 605,000 V-mail letters contained by the 150 mail pouches behind. 70 pounds against 37 tons. Facts that have a special meaning for the planes by which V-mail is always carried to its overseas destination. And so the reels of microfilm are sent immediately to the printing room, where this enlargement machine prints the letters by exactly the same process that home snapshots are enlarged. The enlarging machines can take 3 reels an hour, printing facsimiles so that the V-mail is legible once more after its ocean journey in knockdown size. You may not be able to get a clip from your local newspaper or smell Susie's perfume, but brother, V-mail saves space and time.
But sometimes, like the proverbial rose in winter, love blooms in the most unexpected places, even right on the front lines, even if the two in love don't speak the same language. And throughout history, wherever troops are deployed, come the war brides, and even a few grooms, naturally. As they say, it seems you can't stop love.
I got involved in the war. I was drafted into the Army, and I was sent to Tennessee for training, a specialized outfit. And after my training, we were sent to North Africa, and from North Africa we were sent to Italy. Because I speak Italian, it helped me an awful lot. So one of the fellows met a girl, and he wanted me to go with him to interpret for him. And that's where I met Nancy. At that time, the Germans, they blew up all the systems. They had no electricity, they had no water. In fact, when I met her, there were candle lights in there. And I looked over, and when I saw those green eyes, I was smitten. I started to talk Italian, and they were ecstatic when they heard me talking. American soldiers speaking Italian, they were astounded. And I loved the Italian songs, and we sang Italian songs, and they went crazy for me.
I loved them because he was very gentle.
They were always chaperones.
Yeah, we never went out alone. I remember one day we sneaked. We went to movies, him and I. So when the light came on, I had to hide myself under the seat because I was afraid that somebody was going to see me and my sister was going to get mad.
When I came back to Anzio, I asked permission to get married. They wouldn't do it. We were still at war. They said, some of the Italians still in the army fighting against us with the Germans. I was refused. When the war was over in May, I believe it was. Yeah, war was over. I asked permission again to get married. I got accepted. They accepted me to get married.
Well, we stayed together about, 10, 15 days when we got married.
Yeah.
We went to Capri, island of Capri, for a week. And then when we came back to Naples, he had to go. He went back to France. So I stayed the 6 months without seeing him. I used to send a letter to his family. And then from here, they used to send me back his letters because we couldn't correspond, together. Because for a while we were enemies.
After I got discharged, she came about.
Well, you came back. You came back to the United States.
I came back to the States.
On June 21st, we got here in New York. But in the meantime, I left my family. I loved it so much. And the only thing I remember was the Statue of Liberty. I was afraid. While I was coming over here, I used to think about it. What am I going to do? What am I going to do if he doesn't come? Where am I going to go? I don't know anybody. I don't know how to speak English. I said, dear God, please, let him be there.
I went to pick her up at Pier 82 in Manhattan. The war brides, they were coming down the gangplank, and as soon as they announced names like Nancy Spadone, the guys would be cheering. I would jump over the fence and grab her. She had a little blue dress on, and I took her home.
That's how we start a life together in the United States. I have my two wonderful daughters. I have 2 wonderful son-in-laws, which we love them, and 2 beautiful grandchildren. That's our story.
Santa Chiara, tengo cuore scuro scuro, quando sente dice a gente che s'ha fatta malamente sto paese, ma perché non è vero, non ci credo, e muore con una smania e torna a Napoli, ma che già va paura ci torna.
Professor Chuck Howlett is back with us to talk about a topic very near and dear to his heart. Now, John and Nancy Spadone were married in 1945, a long time ago. The tradition continues. You've just had a military wedding in your own family.
Yes, that is correct. My son, Patrick Howlett, who graduated from West Point and is presently a cavalry officer at Fort Riley, Kansas.
Without the horses.
Right, exactly. It's all mechanized now. Married one of his classmates from West Point, who was in a history class with him, and she is currently serving at Fort Rucker in helicopter training.
Wonderful. Now, will they be able to manage a life possibly at different bases? Is that how the Army still works?
Well, actually, that's a very good question. All Army bases, to my understanding, have helicopter units. They do have air units. So when she's finished with her training, she will then be reassigned to Fort Riley, where Patrick is.
Your son's wedding is part of a long tradition in your family. I was fascinated by the story of your parents. Please tell us.
Yeah, sure. My father, who was from Utica, New York, was in the military in 1937. He served under General Douglas MacArthur, a corregidor. Was discharged in 1939. When World War II broke out, he was reassigned and he was at Mitchell Field. And on a blind date, he met my mother, who was from Babylon, New York. And they developed a relationship, and after about 6 months they married at St. Joseph's Church in Babylon. And then when he was over in the Philippines fighting the war, where he was recipient of 3 Bronze Stars with oak leaf clusters for valor.
Oh, wonderful.
He must have written over 130 letters to my mother.
And we have to call these love letters because they were about love. How important do you think it was to your father to write the letters as much as it was to your mother to receive them?
Certainly, the letters that I've read, and it was very difficult for me because he only passed away in 2004, but all of the letters that he wrote to my mother were beautifully written, very meaningful, telling him how much he loved her, how much he missed his daughter, who was born in 1943, my older sister. There was just a tremendous amount of affection there, and it shows through the letters.
What family treasures these are, and in every family that has had this experience. I have an aside here. I have to ask you this. What did your father think of General MacArthur? Did he ever say?
Yes, he did. A very tough individual, a very smart man, but a very tough individual who probably projected a very aristocratic demeanor. And the soldiers...
From those glasses and the walking stick, my
soldiers did their job. They admired his knowledge, but they also questioned his aristocratic proclivities.
Yes. Don't you wonder if he ever wrote a love letter?
Oh, I imagine that he did, but I'm sure it was probably reserved.
I understand. Now, you served during the Vietnam era.
That is correct.
And I have to ask you this. Did you write to anyone? You weren't married then.
No, I was not married then. Some of the letters that I did write were to my parents, but I didn't have any love life at that point as far as someone that I would be very interested in marrying. So my letters were primarily to my parents and to my grandmother, who was still alive at that point.
And what did it do for you, just the act of putting your feelings on paper?
It was a matter of reassuring myself that there was a purpose for doing what I did, that I had family that was very supportive of what I wanted to do. And of course, as we well know, the Vietnam War was a very unpopular war. But my decision was based primarily on my family's history of service. Even my grandfather, my father's father, was a chief petty officer in the Navy during World War I. So there was always that tradition, and I felt it was incumbent upon me not to abandon that family tradition of service to the country.
And your sons certainly are carrying it on. And we've talked about your son who got married, but you have 2 sons serving.
That's right. I have an older son, older than Patrick, who's a graduate of the Air Force Academy. He's an Air Force pilot. He's been deployed twice. He just came back from his 2nd deployment in May.
As I ask this next question about your sons, I'm reminded of the Civil War era letters. They were so wonderful. The quality of the writing, I believe, surprised all of us. Do you think this is a tradition that's passing, the handwritten letters? Do your sons write?
Certainly, it's a missing art. As a historian, I love looking at the old letters, reading some of the things, and clearly a friend of mine who passed away some years ago had a Civil War diary of her late great uncle, who served in the, actually I think he served in the Confederate Army from Texas.
Good heavens.
But the letters were so beautifully written, and certainly Kenneth Burns' series on the Civil War highlights the way the letters were written, the grammar that was there, the meaning behind the letters, and that continued on through World War I. I have my grandfather's diary aboard ship.
Really?
Yes, I do, and my father's letters were beautifully written. But today, with the internet and the cell phone, it has taken away the visual, what I would call the craft of writing is now a lost art.
The use of email now in the military seems to have an upside and a downside. Let's talk a little bit about that. First, from the writing aspect, even the spelling is different. How would you evaluate the difference between the letters you have stretching now over decades in your family and email correspondence?
One thing that stands out with me is I like handwriting, the script. It says something personal.
So do I.
Whereas with the email, it's a typed format. It's usually in a shorter version. Children today are not really encouraged to write as much or express their feelings, and certainly sending messages over the internet, it's more of a matter of fact. And how much emotion or feeling is expressed in that kind of a transmission remains to be seen.
Do you think we have perhaps for all time lost something that is so important? When you came in today, you brought this precious, and that was my reaction to it, this precious box of mementos in your family, and I could see the edges of letters. It's a time we've perhaps lost?
I believe it has been lost, and I also think that it's easy after you send and transmit the letter through the internet, it's press delete, and it's gone.
That's right.
And certainly from the historian's point of view, unless you're a public official or someone that preserves the emails, historians of the future will have a more difficult time accessing that information to rewrite the history of the past and to understand and learn from it.
We really won't know how the service people on the ground saw the war if they don't record this for us, will we?
Some might, Lynn, if they keep their own personal diary. Certainly, I should say that any kind of transmission, even when my son was over in the Middle East with the Air Force, that's monitored, as we all know. So the messages that you send will be monitored. Probably, and I would suspect also, even the letters that were sent from overseas during World War II were somewhat probably monitored because they didn't want to send any kind of negative message to the public. Well, dear, the doc told me again today that I'd leave the hospital Tuesday. I hope I find the package you sent waiting for me when I reach the outfit. I'm anxious to get the bracelet, but more so to get the locks of hair and your little cross. Hope you send them together. Sweets, I know how hard it is for you to do without me, but certainly I find it dreadfully so, not having you. Two people find all they want out of life and then have to wait so long to enjoy it. It isn't fair, but it's something we have to take like good soldiers. Surely I never fail to hold thoughts of you and Joan Gale continually in my heart. I love you, darlings. God bless you. Love to all the folks. Your husband always, Jack.
Dear Scott, I feel so lucky to be your girl. I'm so proud of you, yet frightened for you, and selfish, because I do not want to lose you to secure the freedom of others. I am sometimes angry with you that you are willing to risk getting hurt or worse to help others. And then I realize that staying behind to care for your affairs makes my job very important too. When you need us, we will be waiting here for you. I love you, Christine.
In our next story, a U.S. Marine Corps military wife, Christine Bradley, stumbled across a shoebox of worn letters she had written to her husband before the winds of war tore them apart. She wanted to share her experience with other military wives and reached out hoping that she could help others in the same situation. Operation Proud Hearts was born, changing lives one letter at a time.
My husband and I were married for approximately 8 years, and I would say that we experienced struggles just as every military family has. I think that our family was touched by issues that touch many families, such as PTSD, depression, and financial difficulties and such, and we were not immune to any of those issues. We really had turned over every stone to seek help. We went through every resource we could. We sought therapy, we had help from family and friends, we had professionals helping us, and finally, I think at the end, we were just both really exhausted. Once the reality that the marriage had ended, I was in my garage sorting through scrapbooks and old clothing and things, and I came across a box of letters that I had gradually built from 8 years of notes and letters that I had written to my husband. And as I pulled each one out, I just found myself, tearing up over each letter and really picking apart what it is that went wrong and how wonderful parts of it were and how other parts of it were so painful. And I think it was at that split moment I had realized that you're never alone, that the feelings that you are feeling, someone else out there is feeling the same thing. What I did was I asked a few other women that were military wives, how do you feel about this? Do you think that women would want to read a collection of letters that were not all good, not all flowery and stand by my man kind of letters, but all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly? And they said, I think that's a great idea. At the time, I had just become new to MySpace. So on my own private profile, I decided that I was going to publish the letters. Operation Proud Hearts really sprang from the publishing of the letters. MySpace had a huge involvement with military families. At a certain point, a lot of the military wives that I had grown to know very well all decided at that point that not only would we publish the letters, but that we would provide the goods, we would provide the services. We would create the revenue that would help us to do the programs that we just could not find. So that was actually how the organization began. It really, I believe that Operation Proud Hearts really began almost like a spontaneous combustion of a lot of people sitting down together saying, we don't see what we want, and let's go do that. And so what would have taken a really long time, grassroots-wise, took us hours. We do provide resources when asked, but we also provide morale. We provide activities for the families to get involved in. I would say that probably the biggest stressor for a military family is isolation. So we wanted to provide an 800 number. The Heartline number is for all military members, including extended military family members. And many of the organizations right now only support immediate family members, not extended. And that was something that we felt strongly about that we wanted to do. We have a variety of volunteers that man the phone, and they're, none of them are paid operators. They're all volunteers with a goodie bag of resources and just a friendly ear. Just someone on the other side of the phone saying, I really care about you, and if you need help, this is how we can help you. We found it difficult to get people to donate items, so what we did was we matched families with families, just to even send them an email or a letter or a little care package to say, if you need any help, this is how we can help you. Operation Proud Hearts, it really is, we're a community. We're all mothers and servicemen and women that have a common goal. We are military families helping other military families, and I think that's our strength.
If you're interested in learning more about Operation Proud Hearts, visit their website at www.proudhearts.org. We'll be back again next week when we look at life after the war and how it changes us, both as a country and as a people, then and now. I'm Lynn May. Thank you for watching, and we leave you with these closing thoughts from our very own Warren Barry. Good night.
Wouldn't it be sweet if we could just bottle up all that love that swept our nation during the big war? After you read a girl's passionate V-mail to her GI lover, you wonder, what kind of note did she leave for him now? And after you put up the storm windows, make sure you put out the garbage. As for the guy who used to compare her to the moon and the stars, now he puts a memo on the fridge, "Don't forget my floss." Oh well, that's peace, I guess, not so passionate. On the home front, the worst victims of war were the teenage boys, too young to serve and too civilian to appeal to the girls who loved anything in uniform. One sailor I knew used to swagger home on leave, roll up his shirt cuffs to show off his dragon emblems and matching tattoos. He was as salty as that old naval hero Admiral Bull Halsey himself. Actually, he was a dental technician at St. Albans Naval Hospital. No matter where a guy served, it always seemed that every serviceman was loved by everybody during World War II. It's just never been the same since VGA Day, 1945. This is Warren Barry.
I'll never forget, one time I had to be, it was a lawn. We were sitting on the lawn and, and trying to make out a little like that. And the little English kid come over and says, "Hey, Yankee, you have any gum?" And I was trying to be good. I said, yeah, I better get rid of the kid. I picked some gum out of my pocket. I said, "Here." Before you know it, a bunch of other kids came around, and that was it. So I said, "Forget it."